So when I come to the Zendo or sometimes sit at home, and as much as I can remember to do, I try to recall and go through Dogen's specific posture list, kind of in the middle of the Fukan Zazengi. And I can feel myself going through that mentally and checking in. So he starts, and part of it starting with the feet, and then starting with your legs, and then going to the hands and how to adjust the hands, and then the torso, the inclination of the body, not forward, not back or left or right, but upright and in the middle. And then going to the hands and the shoulders, the ears, the eyes, the nose, the tongue, the teeth, the breath, and sharing that and taking that teaching. And after going through that, reminding myself that he says, once you've adjusted your posture, take a deep breath. So everyone take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale. Rock your body right, left. And then he says, and settle into a steady, immovable sitting position. Settle into a steady, immovable posture. And I take that steadiness and immovable posture into, I've been spending time reading and rereading the writings and poems and stories of the first Buddhist women. And I've really been struck not only just by the warmth of their connectedness with each other, but the confidence and the strength of their expression and their practice. Struck by the strength of their posture, so to speak. That steady and immovable quality of their practice and their shared practice together, just like we're sharing together this morning. All of these steady, immovable beings that we're all sitting with right now and sharing and practicing together. And these poems and stories come from some chapters or books in the Pali Canon called the Therigatha. And Theri meaning a Buddhist nun, and Gata just meaning verse. So verses of Buddhist nuns. If it was the Therigatha, it would be verses of the Buddhist monks. And I'll share the very first verse. And this verse is not attributed to or a named Buddhist nun. It just says anonymous nun. But it says, "Sleep, little Theri, Buddhist nun. Sleep comfortably, wrapped in the robe that you've made, for your passion is stilled like a pot of pickled greens boiled dry." So the image of this anonymous nun just steadily practicing and discovering and realizing stillness. Stillness at the bottom of that cooking pot. Stillness maybe at the bottom of her being, and her feet and her hands and her shoulders. And just the boiling down of her own clinging, the boiling down of her own pride, whatever she's grasping to. But her passion, her desires are stilled, like that pot of pickled greens boiled dry. So imagining her opening up just to the stillness of a world that's free of her naming, of her conceptions, of things, her manufacturing of stories that maybe she's holding onto with joy or holding onto with pain. She's boiled all of those things away, all of those things that she thought were necessary for her to be her. And her attention and her awareness completely expressing whatever's arising in the moment. And resting, sleep. Sleep, little theory, sleep comfortably. Resting in the acceptance of whatever was in front of her. And many of the poems or stories, I guess, kind of have that flavor. To pull in the pickled greens again, they have that flavor. And these are women of all backgrounds: old, young, rich, poor, mothers, daughters, sisters, grandmothers, princesses, courtesans, widows, and orphans. And they each come from a different place and offering a different teaching in a different way. And imagining them together in that time in India, in a culture where marriages were arranged, and the woman is taking a certain role within her family, within with her relationship with an arranged partner. And yet there's this community of nuns. And then I remind myself in reading these, rereading them, sometimes writing them down, that these poems were not written, they were spoken to each other. And, you know, each is a record of one human being speaking to another. And maybe it was spoken to the Buddha. These were these early Buddhist nuns were practicing together during the time of the Buddha. Maybe they were shared with another nun while they were cooking or while they were having tea. So there is the beauty and the historical importance, but am I really listening to them? And am I hearing them? And I'd like to share more about one of the Buddhist nuns, and her name is Patachara. And we chant her name. When we chant the names of the women ancestors, we'll often chant, that's part of our services during sessions or intensive weekend retreats. We'll chant the names of the women ancestors, and Patachara is in that list. She lived a life of wealth. She also lived a life of tragedy. She lived a life of poverty, and she lived a life of liberation. She was born into a wealthy family. She was born into a banker's family. And when she was young, her parents arranged for her to marry someone, but she was in love with one of the house servants. So they eloped and left home without checking in with her parents. So she, you know, she went against her parents' wishes, against her culture, and she ran away with him, and they set up house in some remote place. And it was almost time for her to give birth to their first child, and she was feeling that longing to go and be with her mother and father. That was also part of her culture during that time. The grandparents are there, and that's a big part of the support. But her husband was very reluctant. You know, we kind of left under these circumstances, and we're not going to be well received. And so they did not go back. And a few years passed, and she was having their second child, and again kept asking, I want to go back, and I want to see my parents. I want to go back. And so they decided to make the journey, but they were kind of late in the game, meaning she was due any time. And it was a fairly long journey as the story goes on. And during this second journey, she was not able to make it home before she gave birth to their second child. And then a storm came and they needed to have shelter. And so the husband goes off to find material to create a shelter. But tragedy strikes and he is bitten by a poisonous snake and dies. She thinks she's been abandoned by her husband. He just couldn't handle going back to the parents. He's gone, but that's not what happened, according to the story. And so she gathered herself and she was like, I'm going to go back to my parents. I have a newborn. I have a 2-year-old, a toddler. And she needed to make it across the river. Her children did not make it across the river. So here is this tragedy striking her again. And because of this storm, her mother, her father, and her brother, their house collapsed. They did not make it through that collapse. So in this story, her entire family was gone. And she lost her way in terrible grief, as anyone could imagine. And then after a period of time of wandering around, people referred to her as a crazy woman, as the lunatic, because she was so grief-stricken. She was often naked and wandering around and wandering in circles, and she was dirty and filthy from just being out in the elements. But one day she entered the Jeta Grove where the Buddha was preaching, and those who were gathered to listen were like, no, we need to try and move her away. We need to keep her away from the Buddha. But the Buddha followed her and put himself in her path. And as she encountered him, he said, "Sister, recover your presence of mind." And she recovered her presence of mind. She saw that she was naked. Someone gave him their outer robe and covered her. "Help me," she said to the Buddha. And she told him her terrible story, her tragedies. And he replied, "Patachara, don't think that you have come to someone who can help you. In your many lives, you have shed more tears for the dead than there is water in the 4 oceans." And these words from the Buddha eased her grief, took away some of that heaviness. And he went on to say that when she herself went to another world, no kin could help her. That even in this world, no kin can help. And he spoke of the Buddha's path. This was early in the Buddha's teaching, so he's speaking of the 4 Noble Truths. He's speaking of the Eightfold Path. When he had finished, she asked if she could be ordained, and together they went to the community of nuns, and she was accepted there. So not only was she a disciple of Buddha and a nun, but she was also revered as a teacher, as a great encourager. And she ordained other women to become nuns. She encouraged and taught them to take their unique posture, to take their unique place and posture in the world. These are a few expressions that I think touch on her relationship with her sisters, with her nuns, with her students, with her Sangha. This is from the nun Kanda. "I met a nun who had her own food and drink. She was Patachara. She guided me in leaving home, encouraged me, and urged me to the highest goal." Uttama said, "I went to a nun I thought I could trust." She was speaking of Patachara. Parakara Pankasta said, she pulled out the arrow hidden in my heart. One of the translations that I've been reading from it's called Songs of the Sons and Daughters of Buddha. And this is another example of her encouragement and her teaching. And this is from the 30 sisters, these 30 nuns at this time that were from all different places, but were with her and practicing with her and studying with her. And it's more of there's a little bit of a conversation going on. And it first starts out with Padachara speaking. Householders dedicate themselves to their families. This will not be you. Sisters, if you practice the insights of Buddha, you'll never regret it. Bathe your feet, sit to one side respectfully, and listen to the teachings difficult to understand. And then the 30 sisters write of Patachara. 30 sisters heard Patachara's words of instruction, words of compassion. What she taught kindled a fire in each of them. At the first watch of the night, each remembered her former lives. So many lives they watched unfold, selves of themselves, flickered, thronged through samsara, thronged through suffering. Hundreds upon hundreds of tangled up lives. Imagine the karma of 30 women, rebirth upon strenuous rebirth. In the middle of the night, at the second watch, each cleansed her heavenly eye. Each saw what's rarely seen, how the entire universe unfolds without substance. During the night's final watch, just before dawn, each tore through a barrier of indescribable anguish. They did it together. They tore through. So encouraging them, the strength of their practice, their devotion to the path. There's warmth, there's support. And then sharing Patachara's poem of enlightenment. When they plow their fields and sow seeds in the earth, when they care for their wives and children, young Brahmins find riches. But I've done everything right and followed the rule of my teacher. I'm not lazy or proud. Why haven't I found peace? Bathing my feet, I watched the bath water spill down the slope. I concentrated my mind the way you train a good horse. Then I took a lamp and went into my cell, checked the bed, and sat down on it. I took a needle and pushed the wick down. When the lamp went out, my mind was freed. So these Brahmins finding riches and doing everything, and it all worked out for them. And then there's some anguish in her next part. I've done everything right. I'm not lazy or proud. Why haven't I found peace? There's this clinging and grasping. But then in something very ordinary, the bathing of her feet, she watches the bathwater spill down the slope, concentrating her mind on the way to train a good horse. So when I read this, I think of, training our own body mind. And I've never trained a horse. I've tried to train a dog and learned much. And part of that is allowing yourself to be trained by the horse or the dog and being completely attentive to the horse or the dog or to the body mind. And giving up what I want and listening to the body mind. And then she relaxes. Then I took a lamp and went into my cell, checked the bed and sat down on it. I took a needle and pushed the wick down, tending to her, the immediate, what's right before her, tending to that. And when the lamp went out, my mind was freed. So in this darkness, she opens up to everything. In this darkness, she opens up to no grasping. A moment of completely accepting and releasing the unfairness of life. There was no one to blame, but completely still and embracing the present moment, embracing the nature of her human existence with all of its unpredictability and all of its impermanence, and awakening to the interconnectedness and her relationship with everything, including the bathwater spilling down the hill. This next poem is from Mita, and I'll put Acharya Mita. Her name means, Mita means friend. Acharya is a Sanskrit word which comes before each woman's name in our chant book when we chant the women ancestors. So Acharya Mita, Acharya Patachara. So there's that formal title for teacher. So this is a poem from Mita, Acharya Mita, meaning friend. And often in these shorter poems, the meaning of their name filters into their poem. And again, remembering this was shared on the front porch with someone. Maybe it was shared with the Buddha. But Mita says, full of trust, you left home and soon learned to walk the path, making yourself a friend to everyone and making everyone a friend. When the whole world is your friend, fear will find no place to call home. And when you make the mind your friend, you'll know what trust really means. Listen, I have followed this path of friendship to its end, and I can say with absolute certainty, it will lead you home. So imagining for, a moment that the person next to you shares those words with you from their direct experience. Very powerful, very encouraging. And hearing these words and listening, I found myself like I can enter that relationship a little bit with these women, just as we do with each other. We practice the pure precept of embracing and sustaining each other and all beings. And we offer a posture to each other and for each other. We offer a posture of value. We offer a posture of dignity, of strength and confidence. We offer softness. We offer warmth in our posture. Much of the time, I don't see or recognize how I'm supported by the Buddha nature, of everything. And in Zazen, though, assuming a posture that expresses that contains a deeper truth, something that's not clouded by I and there and me and my, and adding a little extra drama to something that happened yesterday or in the last 5 minutes. So not defended by my own pride, but a posture of openness to meeting what comes up and allowing everything to come in without wriggling around it. I most often notice the wriggling around it at school with 12-year-olds because I often wriggle out of, or want to, and try, squirm and wriggle out of what's directly in front of me. Whether it's a variety of things. The list is long, and beautiful things. That list is also long. But being steady and immovable and upright, just allowing that all to come in and to embrace and try and sustain. How can I sustain this being one more time? Do one more time. I'll do it one more time. And but it's always one more time, of course. It's always one more time. You know, we hold our hands in meditation, and this, what's called the cosmic mudra, this openness. Everything comes in and there's nothing in there. Everything is there and there's nothing there. Yet there's all these jewels. You know, all of Patachara's bath water is right there in our hands, just spilling all over the place. So we have these jewels. All of the warmth that we share with each other, the compassion and wisdom we share with each other is there, just spilling out. But don't hold on to it. It's not here. It's not like this, like this. We're not grasping it. Sometimes in meditation, when I notice, oh, where have I gone? My hands have done this. I've grabbed on. And it's like, wow, that's really intense. And how long? And then the bell rings. I've been like this for 25 minutes. So there's that openness there. All of Patachara's bath water is in our hands. So again, imagine sitting next to someone that inspires you as a great woman. And this great woman, her name is Uttama. That is what her name means. Uttama, great woman, Acharya Uttama. And this is her poem. For years, I couldn't sleep. Most nights, I'd throw off the covers and take long runs through the dark. Nothing helped. My sisters, when sleepless nights come to tear you into little pieces, rise to meet the day as a tree rises to meet the axe, as a scalp bows to meet the blade, as sparks from a dying fire reach out to meet the darkness, as all of our bones someday fall softly down to meet earth. When you stand, send your roots down between the stones. When you walk like a skeleton walking to its grave. When you lie down like a blown out candle being put back in a drawer. When you sit very, very still. My sisters, sit like you are dead already. How could this world possibly give you what you're looking for when it's so busy falling apart just like you? Look closely. Don't move until you see it. So these wonderful practitioners then and now beside us, we bring all of that into our experience. We bring all of that into each breath. And may our time together with these minutes we've shared today be of benefit to others. And remember that steady, immovable, strong, confident posture. Where is that place in your body where you feel strength? Where is that place where you feel warmth? That place where you feel confidence? And thank you for offering that posture and that place to all of us. Thank you so much.